Welcome into another edition of What Barrie's Talking About from Barrie 360. I'm Dan Blakely. On this week's program, been a stormy week, lots of snow, lots of plowing to do. We get some insight into Barrie's plowing regimen from the city's Director of Operations. Mayor Alex Nuttall pays his regular monthly visit, talking about new infrastructure in the South End and how it will complement new development in the area. And we get our usual weekly Barrie Colts update. Conversation starts after this. Been a busy winter so far for Barrie snow plows, keeping the streets salted, sanded, and plowed. Not just a matter of sending them out when need be. There's some science involved, as well as decisions as to which streets see the plows first. Barrie's Director of Operations, Dave Frairy, sets out the parameters for Barrie 360's Ian MacLennan.
Tell us a bit about your operation in terms of how many snow plows you have. Is it all city-run, contracted out? What's your sort of line of defense?
Yeah, so we've got about 40 trucks that are available to us. They could be plows, sanders, or combination units. And for the most part, it's about 50-50 mix between our staff and contractors. With sidewalk machines, we've got 25 sidewalk machines, and that breakdown is probably about 80% contractors and 20% in-house. With those sidewalk machines, they come with 3 implements. So, we'll usually start the season off with brooms and brushes, trying not to damage sod. And then we'll switch to V-blades when the snow isn't as much. And then when the snow gets very heavy and deep, a lot of accumulation, will switch over to snow blowers.
Now, I know you deal, obviously, but we all know with challenging weather conditions in the winter here in Barrie. In terms of prioritizing main roads, people live in cul-de-sacs. Some may expect that their roads should be cleared as soon as others. How do you determine what roads get cleared first, and do you have sort of the metrics involved here?
Yep, absolutely. And honestly, folks can go to our website or download the app, and it explains everything so well. So now we've got 3 different classifications of roads. We have priority roads. So they're the heavy traffic, usually 4-lane ones. So, your Bayfield, your Mapleview, Dunlop, roads like that. So, and they're maintained, 24/7 if need be. Anytime we see snow accumulate to about 5 centimeters, we're out there, and we have most of our equipment dedicated to that. So we hope to get through there, 6-10 hours to make one full trip. The next one is secondary routes. Now, they may be the ones that are sort of running through your neighborhood that may be bus routes or have hills and corners on them. So, that gets a little bit extra level of service, obviously because of transit. We want people to get around safely. So with that one, it's the same, 5 centimeters, and we try to keep the level of service to bare pavement on priority and secondary for the most part. And then, finally, we got the residential streets. That level of service goes to about 8 centimeters, and in those areas, we'll only put down usually a mixture of sand and a little bit of salt. So it's maintained to sort of a packed snow or packed surface. So you may not see, dry pavement in there, but you can be assured that we'll be out there maintaining them.
Now, with snow squalls, sometimes one end of the city gets hit harder than the others, or it hits fast and then clears and comes back again, as opposed to a general winter storm. And of course, then you've got the freezing rain storms. And what are the most challenging weather conditions? When you look at your radar and go, oh, this isn't going to be a good day.
Exactly. Well, so there's each storm brings its sort of own unique challenges. Certainly the ones that start off as freezing rain and then go into the snow, it's very hard to sort of pre-treat the roads. So you can't put down a lot of salt or anti-ice material because it'll just wash down the sewers. So, we basically have to monitor things very closely. So with technology is our friend. We've got 6 weather stations around town. So it's called Road Weather Information Systems, so the RWIS. And we monitor pavement temperature, wind speed. Those weather stations also have cameras, so we can see what's going on. And we also utilize traffic cameras that we have around town as well. So, the major intersections all have cameras, and we can certainly keep an eye on the radar. And our weather providers also give us warnings when they can determine whether there's going to be things like black ice and stuff. So it's just a matter of monitoring, and then once we determine sort of what kind of storm we're getting, we will then sort of shift our focus and come up with a plan of attack and send crews out.
You talk about pre-treatment, and I know I've heard people say, "Oh, there's a plow out or a salter out, and there's nothing even happening right now." What do you mean by pre-treatment, and is it just specifically salt, or what other ingredients do you have, depending on the weather situation, to prep the roads for a said weather event?
Yeah, depending on how much we're predicting. So you may see them put down a little bit of salt down the center line of the road. So the reason it goes in the center line is that's where the fall off is. So the center of the road's the high point. So what we'll do is we'll put down a little bit of material down the middle of the road. And then as precipitation comes down and that melts, it goes out to the edges of the road. So that gives us a little bit of a head start. The chemical you see put down on the road, all it is basically salt water. And we have a brine maker, so we make our own salt brine. And then we'll go out ahead of a storm, and we'll do bridge decks, corners, etc. What that does, it prevents the snow and ice from adhering to the pavement. So it helps us sort of, peel the snow and ice off a lot easier, and it gives us a head start on the storm. You may also hear folks, the sidewalk machines are the same. I don't have any snow or ice on the sidewalk. Why are they driving around? Well, what they're doing is inspecting the sidewalks, and putting down sand where necessary on the ice. So with climate change, what we've noticed is you have a lot more freeze-thaw cycles. So during the day, you may get, warmer temperatures. The snow and ice will melt, and then overnight it'll freeze again, and your sidewalks will be glare ice. So it may not be icy in front of your house, but it's much cheaper and safer for us to go and inspect the entire route just to ensure folks can get around safely.
What's your budget for snow clearing operations?
It's in around the $8 million mark. It depends on sort of how much salt we put down. With the contractors, we still have to pay them standby fees. And with our staff, we also have to, pay them and have things for them to do. So, on a day like this, when it's not really snowing and we're sort of waiting on the storm that's coming, they'll be out filling potholes and, ensuring catch basins are opened up so we don't have flooding, et cetera, et cetera. So, we can cut down some of the costs, but, as I said, with climate change, you do have a lot of those freeze-thaw cycles. So, tonight we may end up having to send out sanders and salters because the temperature right now, it's just under freezing, so we're probably getting some melt happening. If you look at it, we may have 35 snowstorms a year where we have to go out and plow, but when you compare that to about 118 days where we had to send units out because of things like freeze-thaw, freezing rain, etc. So we're out there not just on those snowy days, but when we're having those warm-ups.
You talked of climate change from an environmental perspective. People do ask, well, salt going into the bay, or are there any? Is it just the usual road salt, or is there any other treatment that's available? When you look at it from an environmental perspective.
Yeah, it's just road salt. That's the cheapest and most effective way to get down to bare pavement. What I can tell you is we use technology, again, to use the least amount of salt as possible. So our usage per lane kilometer has gone down throughout the years. We obviously are adding more and more roadways every year as we grow. You're getting roads like, Big Bay Point, Harvey Road used to be 2 lanes, now it's 6 lanes. So we are purchasing more salt, but the amount of salt we're using on those roads is actually decreasing with the use of, electronic spreader controls and all the trucks. Back in the day, they used to be just valves and knobs, and the operator would be in charge of that. Right now we have a foreman and a road patrolman, and they call out and they tell the exact spread rate to everybody based on the current conditions, and hopefully we're using less and less. When we review our routes, also, if it's a route around a source water well, so half of the city's water is on well, and even around the bays. So, anything around those units, we use even less salt, more sand. And then conversely, in the spring, that's why those areas are swept first. We don't want the sand getting into the catch basins or the salt, making its way down into the bay and that. So, a lot of people will ask, why isn't my street swept yet? Well, we want to ensure that those areas that are close to the wells, close to the lake, close to creeks, are done first. So that's our top priority.
Now, the sidewalk clearing, the fists sometimes get raised in the spring when they look at their lawns and go, oh, man, my sod got torn up. I guess in some cases it's inevitable. How do you balancing act there, and what options are available to residents if they feel, they've lost some sod?
Yeah, and again, the city's website or the app, please, we encourage you to call in, give your name and address. In the spring, we will put your name onto that list for repairs, whether it's full sod or if it's, some topsoil and seed. We'll send the crews out. The contractors that are in charge of removing the snow during the winter are also in charge and responsible for the repairs in springtime. So obviously they don't want to be doing a lot of repairs, so they do their best to sort of clean things up. And as mentioned with the brooms, we try anytime the ground, the frost comes out of it, we'll try and switch to brooms so we're not peeling up sod. Now,
to be fair, I mean, at the end of the driveway, yes, we all know those stories of the snowplow coming by and loading the snow up at the end of the driveway. I saw some posts, people grumbling because the plow may have clipped their blue box or garbage can. Mm-hmm. We have the bylaws regarding parking on the street over the winter time. But how can the public make life easier for the snowplow operator too, aside from getting your vehicle off the street and a snow emergency or following the bylaw? Is there anything else the public can do? Because I would imagine it's a stressful job.
Oh, absolutely, and honestly, we don't do anything like that on purpose.
No.
The last thing we want to do is fill in somebody's driveway, but our job is to get the snow off of the roadway. And, you may see them come by and you think that they're pushing it further back. Well, the reason they're pushing it back to the curb is that's where the catch basins are. So we need to push it back to keep those catch basins clear. With regard to the recycling and the garbage boxes, keep them back of the curb. So you have the curb line, keep them back of that. The plow blades are fixed. They can't go sort of in and out, to knock things over. So if you're sort of on your side of the curb, you shouldn't get hit. Also, if you're looking out to the street, pile your snow to the right side. So if you're looking out to the roadway, shovel from left to right. That way, when the plow goes by, that big pile of snow that's at the end of your driveway isn't going to get pushed back into your driveway. It'll sort of get pushed down the road.
Very good. Final question, what's your favorite season? Winter, spring, summer, or fall?
Oh, summer by far.
I bet it is. The Barrie Colts on a roll, winning 5 in a row after losing 5 in a row to start the year. First place in the East on the line this weekend when they face the Oshawa Generals. We get caught up with Barrie 360's Will Conkin and Colts analyst Gene Pereira.
The Colts continue to roll, Gene. A 3-win week for the club, held on against Owen Sound 3-2, then squeezed past the Brampton Steelheads in overtime 3-2 again, and beat the Brantford Bulldogs 6-3. Gene, what are your main takeaways from this stretch? They had some good play from Kayshawn Aitchison and Carter Lowe.
Yeah, I think really that they're playing like a team again, and this team's strength at the heart of it is their goaltending and defense, and that was clearly evident through this 5-game win streak and turnaround. After losing 5 straight, they kind of got through that adversity, and just outstanding wins, especially the game against Brampton when they were down, and Carter Lowe, who scored 2 goals in that game, scored with 1 second remaining, and then Kayshawn Aitchison with 15 seconds to overtime on a perfect feed from Riley Patterson. That was a huge comeback win, and again for Barrie, just I think at heart, they're giving up 2 goals pretty much or less, and anytime you do that, it really gives you a good chance of winning hockey games.
From the other 2 games, what did you take from that? You said that they, against Owen Sound, they kind of gutted out the win. They just found a way to get it done. What did you think about that?
Yeah, they opened, as a 3-2 win, and, Owen Sound, even though they're kind of in a rebuild mode, they've played very tough. They beat them last time they played them, and, a 3-2 win on this one, and you got to give credit to the attack, but I think it was a game where Barrie did enough to get the win, and they got up ahead in front and held on, got some good goaltending again, which they continued to get from Rebick and Hildebrand, but it really was a grind-out effort, and then you lead in that Brampton game where, again, this Steelheads team, you look at the down 7th in the conference, but they're a lot better team than that, and they showed that, I think, for pretty much the most part. They outplayed Barrie that night, but credit to the Colts, less 1 second coming back, a big emotional win, and then that leads you into face a Brantford team that had won 8 straight coming into that one. Barrie had won 4 straight, and the Colts again played really well and got out to a lead in that one, and again, just strong defensive play. I mean, Brantford is a very good, power play on the power play, and the Colts did a good job, for the most part, staying out of the penalty box and again holding them down defensively.
So there's some more celebrations for the 30th season anniversary. The Colts will honor some former captains prior to Saturday's game at Sadlin against the Ice Dogs. That includes Brian Little and Jeremy Swanson. Gene, what do you think about the festive night and about some of these former captains?
Yeah, it's going to be a fun night. Obviously, seeing a lot of these guys. Brian Little obviously had his number retired. Jeremy Swanson, just a great shutdown defenseman. And Eric Reitz, another guy back in the day who helped Barrie win an OHL championship and advance to the Memorial Cup final. And, just a great story from back then. Barrie played Plymouth in the OHL finals that year. It went to 7 games. And in the 7th game, I guess a lot of Barrie fans had been going to Plymouth to watch the games, and they wanted Plymouth fans in their seats, and they wouldn't sell tickets to Barrie fans. A lot of Barrie fans were having issues getting tickets. So Eric Reitz's father, I think, purchased 1,000 tickets and basically sold them to Barrie fans. And so Barrie, for Game 7, it was almost like a home date, and they had this massive Canadian flag that kind of went half the side of the rink it was just really impressive. It was really loud. Barrie ended up winning Game 7, of course, and advanced to the Memorial Cup that year. It was their first championship, and a big part of that was Eric Reitz and his father getting Barrie fans into the rink. So a lot of great memories with these guys. They were, true leaders, each and every one of them, and different in their ways, but there's a reason they wore that C, and it's nice to see them back at the rink and pay tribute to these guys who really, for several years were the heart and souls of their teams.
So the Colts will also play the Ottawa 67s on Thursday and the Oshawa Generals Friday. Then they do a makeup game with the Kingston Frontenacs on Tuesday. Gene, this before the Frontenacs game, so they have another 3 games in 3 nights. It's a tough time for the Colts and also for you covering everything. You were telling me off air that the Generals game, that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they'll face Ottawa. Ottawa beat them last time they were here, so I'm sure the Colts will want to get back at them. And then, Friday night in Oshawa, that's going to be a big game, a battle for the top of the Eastern Conference. And, Barrie's played well against Oshawa, and, both teams will kind of have their full guns for that one. So that should be a fun one. And then Saturday against the Niagara Ice Dogs rolling into town. And the last time they played at Saddle Arena, they beat Barrie 6-5. So I think the Colts will be looking for a little revenge, although Barrie beat them in Niagara just a short while ago. So, Kevin He for Niagara, a big break for Barrie. And then, 3 games and 3 nights. It's always tough, for any team, that third game. So Barrie's going to have to really rely on its depth this weekend. And then, of course, right back at it on Tuesday against Kingston in a makeup game from a snowed-out game earlier. And the Frontenacs, again, they made some big moves at the trade deadline. They've been playing some really good hockey right away. As well at the top of that Eastern Conference standings. And look, there's just not many points between the teams. I think 5 or 6 between the top 5 teams. And it really tells you how close things are. And these big head-to-head matchups, they loom huge and could be the difference in getting that home ice, that first top spot, and home ice throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Every game matters as we continue down the stretch of things. Looking forward to this stretch of play. Thanks again for chatting, Gene.
Thanks, Will.
Queen's Park sending some funding this way for some much-needed infrastructure in the south end of Barrie to accommodate development in the area. Here again is our Ian MacLennan with Mayor Alex Nuttall.
You were with Councillor Sergio Morales and MPPs Kangin and Downey to announce funding from the province, $18+ million towards a huge infrastructure project in the city's south end. What's happening and where in the south end?
Yeah, so this project's over at Mapleview Drive East. It's going from essentially Yonge Street down to Prince William Way to the southeast part of our city. And it's to expand the roads, the infrastructure in the area to allow for, obviously, traffic to move in an easier way over there. If you think about the thousands of homes that have been going up, whether those are single family or 4 or 6 story apartment buildings and condo buildings, then you think about the GO train station, the 1,200 units that are going to the seniors village right there. There's so much that's happening in that section. And so having these dollars to be able to expand the road and build the infrastructure, I think is a great step forward for Southeast Barrie.
Now, as you and the MPPs indicated, this project will support about 11,900 new housing units. What do you say to people that, slow down, our infrastructure can't keep up, our roads are, or some say crumbling in certain areas. What's the balancing act here? How challenging is it for the city?
Well, I think it's incredibly challenging. And if you think about what I actually ran on for mayor was to fix the roads, to get the infrastructure built, to bring it back up to snuff, which is what we've been working on for the last number of years. Think about Bryan Drive getting completed and the amount of work we've seen on the roads to actually fix them and resurface them to preserve them in the future. So it's always going to be a very difficult balance. But I think what's important here is that, we have homes that are going to be built over there for the next 10 to 15 years. And too many times in Barrie, we've built the homes and then brought the infrastructure up. And what we've tried to do is turn that on its head. Let's build the infrastructure, and then the homes and all of the other things and jobs, et cetera, that are happening around it can come behind that infrastructure upgrade. When I was quickly in this exact area, when I was elected as the city councilor in 2006, not long after that, maybe a month or two after that, Big Bay Point Road got shut down and Mapleview Drive got shut down for expansions, meaning that folks had to drive into Innisfil to get back into Barrie. And that was an example of where we failed to do the infrastructure upgrade in advance, and then we were playing catch up. So I think it's good to see that this is happening in advance and this expansion is taking place.
And there is an infrastructure levy contained within the city budget. It's 2%. And how long? I think that preceded you too. This levy. What is that levy for specifically?
So what was happening previously is when you look at the operations budget for the city, there was a lot of dollars going into City Hall, into staffing, into different programs, and so there was a steady increase in the size of what I call City Hall. What we've tried to do is take that funding, hold the line on the operations budget, which we've done, and then we've said, okay, let's provide for a 2% capital surcharge, which allows us to invest in roads, invest in infrastructure, community centers, libraries, things like that. And so over the last number of years, we've had a very successful run towards actually being able to invest in this infrastructure. And it actually puts us in the position where when we apply to Doug and Andrea for additional dollars, we have the dollars in the first place to be able to make the project happen. And by doing that, it means that our chances are really increased in terms of attaining and receiving funding from the province of Ontario. If you look at the last year, if you remember what Premier Ford came to town, $6.5 million. Sean Fraser came to town, $24 million.
That was on the federal side?
On the federal side, sorry, yeah. We $18.5 million here now for this project, $3 million this morning for cleaning up parks, and there's been a bunch of other smaller ones over the year. We've never had this type of funding coming from federal and provincial governments for the city of Barrie, and I think it's a testament to council and staff working so well together, but it's also a testament to the greater Barrie team, where everybody's trying to get the projects done that need to happen. And this is just another example. I think things are humming and ticking along in a really good way.
That 11,900, is that part of the target that the province set for the city of Barrie in terms of new housing units?
Yeah, we have a target that we're 23,000.
23,000.
Now, we're doing actually really well in comparison with other municipalities. Put in perspective, we have by December 31st, I think it was about almost 4,000 new units in 2 years that we had hit the market. And when you look at that in comparison with other municipalities, nobody got close to hitting their goals to be able to receive provincial funding. We did actually. We got to 84%, meaning that we passed the 80% marker in order to receive those dollars. So I think we'll have more of these types of announcements coming forward. And housing, as much as, hey, Barrie's growing and lots of people want to move from somewhere else here, I think it's even more important that we get housing built for folks that are living in Barrie. Like, there's got to be enough rental. There's got to be enough market purchase properties that folks can actually get into it.
Well, and whether it's first-time home buyers or people who have to rent, that's the issue people might say to you. You've probably heard, build all the homes, but how do I afford these homes, or how do I afford to rent? What do you tell people there? Well,
look, I think it's really important. We've talked about this a number of times on this podcast. The affordability equation for a long time was focused solely on the expense side, meaning that when you're thinking about what affordable looks like, it's like, well, how much is my rent going to be? How much is my mortgage going to be? And what are my bills going to be? It's really important. That's one side of it. And it's a very important side, but it's just as important that we look at jobs and well-paid jobs so that folks in Barrie can work in Barrie and they can afford housing in Barrie. And that's why over the last 2 years, we've been focused. I mean, just down the street from here, we have another 36 acres of industrial coming online. It's flying off the shelf. That's really good news. Park Place moving ahead with industrial space, about 500,000 square feet. That's why we're begging the province for funding to be able to bring the lands beside the 400 in the South End, Mackay Road area online to get industrial to market. And that's why we're asking for land in the North End to be able to get jobs here so folks can, afford to pay for a house here and work here.
Now, the province is also handing out a lot of funding as we head towards an election, obviously. You talked about parks and encampments. What dollars and cents are you getting? And is this through the county of Simcoe? So
it's actually through the province. The province is providing another $3 million to the city of Barrie and to the county. The city has to go in and actually work with bylaw to appropriately restore the security in each of these parks. But the county needs to go in and provide the services that helps these folks have somewhere good to go afterwards to get the help in terms of addictions.
And this funding, there were
support.
Stipulations attached to this by the province, correct?
Yeah, there's
certain ones. Do you know?
So for us, I know this is almost identical to the request that I had made 4 months ago. The work that we did over the fall to get movement from the province on cleaning up parks and ensuring that these folks would have the supports available has paid dividends, and that's $3 million today. It's also, there's other announcements coming with regards to this subject matter, and it's all coming down to, if you ask me, council made a very, I think, determined request to the province to move in a direction that would allow us to have safe parks, but also have the services available. So working with the county, we're going to do that. We'll see that happen over the next number of months. And our goal, and whether we'll get there or not, but you got to set the goal, is that we don't have encampments in Barrie, that we have the proper transitional housing in place, that we have the proper supports in place, so individuals who are choosing to get help can get that help.
So those shelter spaces and those services technically then aren't available, or just not enough availability?
Well, I think it depends on the day. They do a count each evening, and
It's a moving target?
Well, I think it is a moving target in the sense that, individuals come and go out of town, right? So maybe they're here for a few days, and maybe they're in Toronto for a few days, and maybe they're in Guelph for a few days. So yeah, it's a moving target. But I think that what we've struggled with and where we've been a little bit hamstrung was related to the courts. And the court's saying basically, like, if you don't have a unit that the person's willing to accept, then it doesn't count as a unit. And I think you'll see through Hamilton, there was a court case where a lot of that was taken in a different direction, which was it's just as important for the park spaces to be safe for the vulnerable folks who are, kids and grandparents as it is for the vulnerable folks who are struggling with addictions and homeless. And so I think that there's a little bit of that pendulum shifting back in terms of the judicial system, but we'll have to wait and see because there's an appeal now being filed against that Hamilton case, and we'll have to wait and see where it all shakes out in the judiciary.
What is your hope as we work towards the spring and summer when there are more encampments, the weather is more conducive? Because some have branded you, you're trying to fix the problem with council, trying to get people who are released from Penetang jail to where they used to live or their home. Others have branded you that you don't care. How do you balance that, and what's the ideal that you would like to see?
Well, it's interesting because we've put more funding as a city into this issue than anyone has before. We put money into having food for those who are unable to find dinner. We're putting money into helping people get home. As you said, we had the CNCC, or as I call it, Penetang Jail drop off in downtown Barrie, which we stopped. And there's been lots of other investments, Salvation Army and others that have received dollars towards their services. I think the idea that anybody in Barrie doesn't care is just not an accurate one. What I think that there's folks who look at this and they say, people should be able to put a tent where they want. They should be able to, smoke drugs or inject where they want. They should be able to go about their day and they're dealing with trauma, and the rest of us should work around that. But I am not of that belief. My belief is that you can't put the trauma of adults ahead of the innocence of children, meaning that when you're in a park, you shouldn't be able to have somebody shooting up, teaching kids just by visual that drugs exist, let alone here's how to do it, because that's what we're seeing in parks. And we need to demand better as a society, both on the safety and security in that park, but also to have long-term solutions for rehabilitation services available. And that's what this funding that's coming down today is. This is a marked shift in the policy and the philosophy of the provincial government, away from warehousing individuals for a night and towards providing long-term meaningful help. And I think that if you really care about somebody, you want them to get that long-term sustainable help more than just warehousing an individual for a night.
And that's our program for this week. Thanks to Ian and Will for their input, to Matt Ladder for his technical touch, and to you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to What Barrie's Talking About, rate it, review it. You can also keep up with What Barrie's Talking About on Blue Sky and X at Barrie360, on our website, Barrie360.com, and there's our daily Kickstart podcast available from any streaming service and on our website. I'm Dan Blakely. Hope you'll join us again next week.